Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. Pitching analysis here, Kyle. I'm going to pair him up with this Japanese pitcher here. We're going to take them both into their leg lifts. All right, you can see coming out of their leg lifts, the Japanese pitcher really does a good job of getting his momentum going. Kyle coming out of leg lift, more squatting in this position. So that needs to be the first move. The first movement needs to be that forward and down at the same rate. What that does is starts building momentum towards the target, and it allows your drive leg to load correctly or properly. We'll talk about that loading. If I squat straight down, then I get to a point where I've loaded in flexion the drive leg, but I haven't angled it to where I can actually use it going towards the target. So basically, when we peak the flexion of the ankle, knee, and the hip flexor, that's the point if we're implementing the stretch shortening cycle where we need to drive. And the point is when your force vector, your ankle to knee, when it's still pointing vertical, then your drive is going to push you off the ground. It's going to take force and move force in that direction. So that's why we have to go forward and down at the same rate. Because what happens when we go forward and down at the same rate, like we can see with the Japanese pitcher here, when the moment flexion or triple flexion is peaked in the ankle, knee, and hip flexor, you now have a linear force vector. So here's your linear force vector. Okay, so you get that 54 degrees as opposed to Kyle's is at 80 degrees. And like you said, what's going to happen is with that momentum going forward here, the force vector is getting linear, and now the push is going to push more back, which is going to help continue to accelerate the hips more forward. And that's the key. So Kyle's in a position where he's going to have to try to reach with the front side to help get him moving forward. So he starts reaching with this, and you can see the glove side trying to reach and swing to help move him forward. And now it starts to mess up the sequencing of the body what we're ultimately looking for, which is sequencing from the ground up. So let's watch the proper way of doing it. You can see the Japanese pitcher now drives. You see extension of the back leg into front foot, and front foot stabilizes, and that would be like the perfect sequencing of, let's see, ankle. You can see extended hip or knee, and hip flexor, and perfectly too, delaying of the trunk to allow the trunk to then sequence after the power movement. So we say that triple extension is your transmission, and hip to shoulder separation, keeping your shoulder separated from your hip, is your transmission, because that's going to then accelerate more of that energy forward. So we can see here with Kyle going into front foot strike, when he stabilizes, we see as the hip is coming around, so is the shoulder. And that's because one thing here is the glove is tucked, which exposes the chest, which brings the arm around, and that's because he used the glove side to pull him forward, because the momentum and the drive was not in a position to do that at the right time. So now what you have is that early trunk rotation. You can see the big difference here: open chest, closed chest, and you can see even more drive into this movement. So it's going to be, as long as this Japanese pitcher stabilizes, you're going to see the trunk carry forward as the arm lays back. And here you're going to see as the chest opens with Kyle, the arm's not laying back. The trunk isn't really moving forward as well. That's all because everything was sequenced or out of sequence, and the upper body went early. And then you even see the Japanese pitcher extending front leg, this is an optimized delivery. This Japanese pitcher couldn't be doing any more to optimize ball speed, and he's a little guy. He's not a big guy, so that's what it takes for him to throw, into the 90s. So it's really learning how to initially get to that linear force vector like the Japanese pitcher did so well here, and how to drive out of that movement into optimal hip to shoulder separation is really things that Kyle needs to learn as he matures and develops in this skill.